Our guest is a man who worked under former President Mwai Kibaki and then transitioned and was elevated by current President Uhuru Kenyatta. He's Engineer Michael Kamau. He was very many times referred to as Kibaki's roads builder, and he'll tell us about that. When I was speaking to him yesterday and inviting him to the show, he asked me, so where is your studio? I tell him it's on Mombasa Road and this is the Standard Group Center. Yeah, I see Standard Group Center. What's the best road to approach? I told him, boss, you built the roads. Surely.
You should have asked him, where are you coming from, sir?
Maybe there's a road you even know.
Which we don't know.
Yeah. You know, he could start telling you about some road you have never heard of. And he tells you, I could, for example, link between Moktadada and Loiter and then get into, and then...
at that point, he's lost you completely.
Totally. Engineer Michael Kamau, good morning.
Good morning.
Good to have you on the show. We call that the hot seat of the Situation Room.
Aha.
And it's a pleasure to have you. But because we are in National Morning, this is not a hot seat at all. It's just a warm seat for you to share your story, pay your tributes to the former president. You worked for him as the permanent secretary for roads and infrastructure between 2007 into 2013. But I'm sure you'd worked in that ministry before.
Yes.
When did you join government?
On 14th September 1981, straight from university. In fact, we were coming from the halls of residence. We were employed before we left university, even before the exams were out.
Did you say 1981?
1981.
That's the same year I left university.
Oh, so we were together.
It appears so.
Singing the JM song.
Yes.
Oh, why,
why you shot him down.
And our people united will never be defeated. Yeah. We're in the same campus.
Clearly, you are a comrade.
Yes.
City.
Yes.
Yesterday we had Matere Kereri here. He's 88 years old.
Yes.
And in everything that he was giving us not just years. On the 23rd of February, 1982, I resigned. On the 18th of March, I don't know which year, I left Makerere. So here is Michael Kamau giving us the date he joined government.
I'm wondering. Oh, yes.
Do you remember your first day of reporting to work?
Not only that.
And what you were dressed in?
We got appointment letters before we finished our last exams.
We
knew exactly where we were going.
And all of you were going to government?
Yeah, before.
We were government employees.
Yeah.
Problem was they might post you somewhere. You got a letter, then dash to the library just to figure out where this place is.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
So what ministry did you join, engineer?
That time it was Ministry of Works and Physical Planning. But it has metamorphosized Ministry of Works, Ministry of Roads, Ministry of Transport, but basically the same structure at community, Hugh Plaza, and then I moved to Works Building and then to Transport. I've worked in 3 buildings. And I joke, now I left Transport to go to the court.
You crossed over.
I crossed over.
Just the road.
So I've been working in community, with a stint at Moore University.
Into High Court.
Yeah, with a stint at Moore University for 9 years as a university engineer.
When President Kibaki was a minister,
yes.
At the point when you were joining, he was vice president and minister of Home Affairs and then became minister of Health. You were working in government.
Yes.
Did you at all interact with him?
Or at private functions, but not in government, through some of my relations. But it's not somebody you knew or spoke to. So I really got to know him when I was appointed chief engineer. That's when we started now interacting together in government. Not before. Not before. No, what I would call one-on-one interactions.
What is your first one-on-one? When did you now start working more directly with Kibaki?
When I was appointed chief engineer roads, that's in 2006. Yeah.
And he was president.
And he was president at that time. Yeah, so Mzee Nyachai, we had a meeting. My minister was Honorable Simeon Nyachai, the late. And during our meetings, briefing meetings, that's when we started interacting with the president. And then, of course, almost 5 to 6 times a year, we would be commissioning a road project starting. So we would prepare briefs for him take them to him, go through them, and then prepare his speeches and generally articulate what we want and discuss the day's program. We always used to meet the president before he launched or commissioned a project, either to open a new road that has been constructed or to commission the construction of a project. And this continued throughout his period as president.
He obviously had a vision to develop the country infrastructurally.
Yes.
And he chose you. He chose you to be part of that team. Why do you think he chose you?
I don't have the foggiest idea. I don't have the foggiest idea because in the first place, I wasn't in the road sector. I started my career as a structural engineer in the building sector. I was appointed as a deputy, let's call it deputy chief materials engineer. And then I was, for those who understand, I was again redesignated to go back as a deputy chief structural engineer. So I came in as an outsider into the road sector in 2006. But from my background as an engineer, civil engineer, and I'd done courses in Belgium to prepare me for roadworks. Somehow I was prepared. But I don't know who made the decision or how the decision was made.
What did you teach at the university?
Oh, at Moi University, I didn't teach. I was the resident engineer for all university projects. They found that they needed an engineer. When Joseph Parapreting, the former head of public service, became the chairman of the university, we had worked him in the Ministry of Public Works as our permanent secretary. And we had interacted very closely because we were doing a school for him, Teriga High School. Then we had very close interaction when we were doing what we call the Chancellor's Court at the University of Nairobi. You know, when they took the double intake, the Chancellor's Court became very small, and they had to go to the graduation court, and there were serious problems. And I was called, and then every week we used to go and brief the head of public service. And I think at that point he saw me. So when he was appointed chairman of Moi University Council, he found that they didn't have an engineer. He spoke about that Brown Fellow, the engineer, the Brown at the ministry. And I was posted to Moi University against all my wishes. And I went to PS, Peter Wabura, and told him I want to resign. He told me, I'm not the one who asked you to go there. It is the head of public service. Go and tell him that. So I found myself at the university, and I spent from 1991, 3rd of September 1990 to February of 1998. I was at Moi University. So we did everything there. Margaret Thatcher Library, the upgrading of Moi Referral Hospital, and everything that was being done at Moi University. Yeah.
Something that has always puzzled me. Now, this is with regards to infrastructure projects like roads. Huh?
Yes.
Just help us understand. What is the process that is undertaken before we actually see people on the road building a road? And what length of time does it take? And if it's a road, I'm speaking as a layman here.
Yes.
Is it just a road, or is it a road that encompasses a certain entirety of networks and everything else that happens in the country? Just so that we understand how this thing works.
First of all, you start with a feasibility study.
Yes.
Okay? That gives you the economic rate of return, whether the road will be viable, the investment is good. Okay? It can also be political or security. Let's say you want to do something, the National Security Council has decided that there is a threat, let's say from an external source, and the only way we can do it is to build a road so that we're able to take our military there easily, deploy. So it could be security, it could be political, and it could be for other reasons, economic. Let's take the road from Isiolo to Moyale. Regional connectivity. It was part of the Great North Road from Cape to Cairo. So the Kenyan section was the only one that was remaining, a small section in Tanzania and in Kenya, 500 kilometers. So, first of all, you do a feasibility study to find out whether this road is going to repay itself. If you take a loan, it's going to repay itself. What is going to be the economic impact? Because in some cases, you may not have a study. You don't know the projections. And the best example is Northern Bypass. The Eastern Bypass. The road did not exist. But you visualize how is it going to impact movement of transport. So you do studies to find out, let's say from Thika, you ask people their destination. And you find out that maybe in 1,000 cars, the destination of 200 cars coming from Thika are going to Mombasa. But they have to come to Nairobi and through Outer Ring. So you decide if you do a bypass, then you are going to stop 100 vehicles or 20% of the vehicles from Thika coming into Nairobi. And therefore you find it's an alternative route. And therefore you build it.
And this process, how long do they usually take?
It can take long because the feasibility studies could take up to 6-7 months. Before we got what we call the total station, the surveyors would be there doing a lot of hard work. But now with total stations, the design is easier. We have equipment now that is able to do the probing of the ground, because you have to do soil testing to find out what is the structure of the soil, so that you're able to design your pavement. And if there are any structures that needs to be designed, then you need to know the nature of that. But now there are scientific equipment that can give you a heads up on what kind of soils are there before you do the physical drilling to get out the soil profiles. Yeah, so that's the process. And then you prepare the documents. After that, you prepare the bidding documents, which include the BOQs, the Bill of Quantities, and other documents.
1 year, 2 years, 3 years?
Hi. Let me give you an example of Thika Road. We did the design in about 9 months. From start to finish, Thika Road took about 2 years. And that was very, very condensed. From start to construction, about 18 months. It was 18 months. But it was intense. It was very intense.
Was that one of the characteristics then, that word that you're using of intense? You obviously known as Kibaki's roadsman. Obviously, you know your stuff, 1. 2, he had this grand vision, again, for developing the country.
Yes.
And you're talking about having to condense things within a very short period of time. Did this then characterize the future projects that you would then do? And did you think that you really grasped the vision that he had and then were able to deliver on it?
I think we grasped his vision. But maybe let me just go back a bit. We have to contextualize things. And if you are here in 2002, you know that you could not start with construction of new roads because everything was dilapidated. There were jokes, in fact, of travelers coming from South Africa that the potholes between JKIA and City Center, a giraffe could fall in and you could only see the head and get lost in there. So we started with rehabilitation of roads. And therefore, in fact, the words on the billboards would be rehabilitation or reconstruction because everything was dilapidated. The Nairobi-Mombasa road, Mombasa to Maraba road was completely worn out. If you remember, there is a time traffic could not flow for about 1 week where it had been washed out by El Nino. So I think we captured his vision, and it was very, very easy because President Kibaki, his focus and what he wanted, you could clearly discern. And then also he had a head of public service, Ambassador Mudhaura, who clearly understood his vision because as a PS, Ambassador Mudhaura was our boss. Therefore, the trickle down from the president to Mudhaura was very, very easy. And we used to have permanent secretaries meetings every month on the first Monday of the month, where he would really tell us the policies that the government has decided, the projects, what needs to be done. And then it was a kind of a corrective responsibility, such that if you're working with the PS for lands, They don't give you problems for land acquisition. The Attorney General would be there if you are going to sign loan agreements, so that what he created was seamless, seamless action within ministries. But to understand his vision, basically it was very simple. It was, you've been given this responsibility, it lies squarely on your shoulders. So failure, if you failed, the worst thing you would feel is to go before President Kibaki and you really told him something that made you look stupid. I mean, we dreaded that as PSs and I think as ministers. And therefore, you went out of your way to really work hard to make his vision come to fruition.
Knowing that is the vision, and it's a bigger picture, he's looking at, okay, we need roads in this country. There are those that are existent on the map, but they are not there physically. There are others that we have to think about how to connect people, to open up areas. How do you prioritize? How did you prioritize these projects? How did you know, all right, so let's start with, even if it's rehabilitation and reconstruction of roads, these are the ones that we start with?
It seems you are there in the briefing, because after rehabilitation and reconstruction, the next thing was regional connectivity. Ourselves and our neighbors. Tanzania was one of our biggest trading partners. Uganda is one of our biggest trading partners. Ethiopia had been lying there. They had built their road to Addis Ababa, from Mwere to Addis Ababa, and we still had 500 kilometers. Nairobi and Addis were not connected by tarmac. So, regional connectivity. And that is why it was very easy to get funding from World Bank and from the African Development Bank to fund these projects. After regional connectivity, then we said, in fact, those days, we were told, the vision was very clear. We must connect all the provincial headquarters. The roads between provincial headquarters must be good. Nairobi, Garissa, Nairobi, Nyeri, Mombasa, Embu, Eldoret as a headquarter for North Rift, Nakuru, all those regions. So the provincial headquarters, and then we went to the district roads, trying and connect the 47 districts as that time, as they were called. So the vision was quite clear.
And the funding for this then was the other issue, because Kibaki is credited to going and facing east to finance many of these infrastructure projects. Whose decision was that, or whose recommendation would it be? Is it the finance ministry? Is it the Ministry of Roads and Infrastructure? Or is it the president himself?
Let me first of all put something in perspective. When he came in as president in 2003, the total funding in the roads department was about 12 billion. And that included development, recurrent, and also, development budget was about 12 billion from the fuel levy fund, from development partners, and from the exchequer. And by the time he left, it was in excess of 100 billion. So what happened? There was trust in the government. The World Bank, you remember the structural adjustment, and they could not give us money.
Yeah.
The World Bank came back in a big way. African Development Bank, which had left the road sector, they were doing small health centers, decided to come in a big way to fund road projects. The Japanese government, which after building the Sabaki, this bridge, Mtwapa, Kilifi bridges, they abandoned, and the road in Ukambani, they abandoned the road sector and then went into other sectors. The trust they had in the Kibaki government made them come back into the road sector and start funding projects like the Japanese with the port of Mombasa, the container terminal. They came in and did the Western Missing Rings, the Dogokudu, and the Gong Road to Dagoretti Corner. So all the development partners, I think, came back and decided now we have a sector. But this was preceded by reforms. Kibaki laid the foundation for infrastructure development in this country. Before all the work was domiciled in the office of the chief engineer roads, he was the one responsible for all road works in Kenya, one person. And if you went to the office of the chief engineer roads, you had to look for him because the files were piled.
Literally look for him.
Yes. So we had reforms. These reforms, which were supported by development partners, and it was the Kibaki government, it was his vision. I think he had seen very early that this work needed very many people. And that is why we had the Roads Act, which created the KENHA, the Kenya National Highways Authority, the Kenya Rural Roads Authority, and the Kenya Urban Roads Authority. And these reforms came with a lot of resistance because basically the PS was the employer, and now the PS would not be the employer. So where these reforms were carried out when I was PS, they had started earlier, but the Roads Act was passed when I was PS. And basically it meant that we were going to cede power.
You were losing your power.
You are losing your power as the
You are
employer.
devolving.
So you devolve and you are left with nothing. Basically, in terms of financial resources, they were going now to be managed by boards. And therefore, this now was the nectar that attracted the funding. And you can see now the work that was being done by one person is being done now by 3 persons and 3 boards, independent boards. And that is what attracted money. The World Bank was quite happy with the integrity issues. They used to have serious integrity issues. They came in, they would look at the bidding process. Okay, we sent the documents to them. They find out whether we've done the procurement properly, and we would work with them. In fact, we said, why let's prepare documents, approve the documents. We do the bidding, send somebody as a representative within the evaluation committee so that the documents, you don't have to look at them when they come to you. And that is how we attracted the financing into the road sector. And then, of course, we had very good ministers in that sector, starting with the Right Honorable Raila Odinga, who was there the first 3 years. We had Nyachai. Nyachai was followed by Mechuke. Very focused, people who would sit in the office and talk to you, and then Kones came in. After Kones, we had Obure as an acting minister, and then we had Bet, who was a very good minister. He had been a PS and understood everything. So everything gelled. But I must say it is the space that President Kibaki gave everybody to utilize it, and you are not afraid of making mistakes because we are treading a path that others had not gone before. That kind of freedom to exercise your knowledge. And failure, if you made a mistake along the way that was not fatal, you didn't have a problem.
You live another day.
Carry on.
You live another day.
Let's take a break at this point. Michael Kamau, MSM.
Yes.
What is MSM?
Michael Sistu Mwaura Kamau.
Michael?
Michael Sistu. Michael was an archangel. Sistu was a Greek pope. So my parents gave me those names and I go along with them.
Mwaura.
Yeah. Mwaura was my grandfather.
And Kamau now.
Kamau is my father.
Hey.
Yeah.
Michael Sistu Mwaura Kamau.
Yep.
Former permanent secretary in the Kibaki era between 2007 and 2013, credited as one of the people who are Kibaki's roads persons. He's here with us. He also was elevated to cabinet secretary for roads by President Uhuru Kenyatta. He has seen the building of Kibaki's infrastructure, and that's what we're talking about today. What was it? How did they deliver Kibaki's dream? 27 minutes to 9, we're live on KTN Home, on SpiceFM, on Facebook, and on YouTube. Let's take a quick break, and when we come back, we continue this conversation.
This is the Situation Room.
You're telling us about your experience, working as chief roads engineer, PS, under President Mwai Kibaki. As we were taking the break, you were speaking about how it was working as a PS, working under the various ministers then, working with your juniors, and all of you sort of working with some pride and walking the spring in your step. And the other people who've talked about the Kibaki years, who are working in the public service, are saying the same thing. What is it that Kibaki then did to the public service that gave it this new vigor?
How do I put it? Many things. But the work environment, I think, was the singular most important thing. In 2002, to be honest, you could distinguish government offices. If you entered into the lobby, they were stinking. And you could not use a toilet in any government office. I used to work at Hill Plaza, and we would pretend we are going for coffee at Pan-Afric to use the toilets at Pan-Afric Hotel.
Not even using the toilets in your own office?
Yes. There was no water. You didn't have running water in many offices. That was... And call George Mohoho, who became the MD of Kenya Airports Authority. Let him tell you about the situation of the toilets, when he took over, and what he did to improve the situation. So the sanitation of government offices was very bad, and it was improved. And offices, we had standard offices. Offices began to change. And the work environment, we started seeing flowers in government offices. Flowers, carpets were worn out, they were dusty. And
but a lot of... Was this presidential action? I mean,
how do you
did it have to be a
to
president to clean toilets?
It doesn't have to be, but you see... I like the words to describe, but this is part of the transition. This is where we were. There was no money. Money was not flowing, as I told you about the portals. All accidents, if you read the newspapers and go back to your newspapers, you are going to find that he was avoiding an accident. Every other accident was avoiding a portal. And then it changed. Oh, now overspeeding. It became overspeeding. Oh, give us bumps. People are dying. This road has come now. So that is the kind of thing, the transition. We came from a deep hole. And I think it was... Kibaki pulled us out of a situation. And it was difficult. It's like going to plow a shamba that has not been plowed. And the first crop, So I think he laid the foundation for all these things, the infrastructure, everything. As I said, he was a reformist president. I told you the things that he reformed within the road sector. The three organizations. Also the creation of the National Construction Authority after the building at Nyamakima collapsed. So that you'd have people, he saw the gaps. The council was not able to supervise buildings and therefore created institutions. So that is the kind of thing, a work environment. I remember Honorable Toro telling us that if you come to the Ministry of Roads at 9 p.m., the lights were still on in Transcom building. People are working. When I was PS, I never bothered. I would never check on whether people are coming in at 8. Because I wouldn't try to find out whether they have gone out for lunch over that lunch hour. People would work. You go for your lunch at 3. When it suits you, you leave the office at 7, 8, 9. When Michoki was minister, I used to leave the office at 9. We would all be there. Not because he was there, but if the minister is there, where are you going?
People are working and they're enjoying working.
They were enjoying, and then we opened the space for them. Oh, you call somebody at 8 o'clock. Oh, yeah, are you in? No, I'm in traffic. I'm leaving the house now. He tells you I stayed late. You tell him, oh, okay, talk to me when you get to the office. And that was it.
Do I hear you to be saying, Engineer Kamau, that the blueprint, the master plan that we are seeing for the infrastructure that we are now enjoying in this country was laid in the Kibaki area?
It was indeed, and let me go back further. There were two things that happened. The Treasury and Planning, when he came in, they read what we call the very famous blueprint, Economic Recovery Strategy.
For wealth creation.
For wealth creation. That was done by Treasury. Professor Nyong'o was there. Joseph Kenyua, the ministers then. And that is what every civil servant used to talk about. Economic recovery strategy for wealth creation. When he did with that, okay, then we came in with Vision 2030. Okay? And Vision 2030 is the blueprint that is guiding Kenya's infrastructure development up to now. You know, he conceived projects like the LAPSET. You know, it was difficult. Where does the road pass? Oh, it will pass somewhere between Lamu. Even as we had to look at map, decide. We've not built it, but it's a vision that continues to guide the infrastructure development. And my key take off from that Vision 2030, and it's in one of, it hangs on my wall, is relentless follow-up. Do not leave things. You follow up to the last minute. And I would tell people, if you come to my office and I promise you that I'm going to do something, please follow up. It is in this book. And therefore, you can call me 20 times. It wouldn't irritate me, because that's the only way you get things done.
When we speak about infrastructure, many people think of only roads.
Yes.
But then there's ports, like you've said. There's the airport. There's other infrastructure projects. Tell us about the others. The expansion of the port, the airports.
The rail.
Let's start with buildings. As I told you, I was in the building sector.
Yes.
If you recall, I don't know where you are from, but we had very many stalled projects. Let's start in Nairobi. The GSU camp inside State House itself had kwamad. The famous Ruaraka here, NYS, it was a nasty site. The Nyanza provincial headquarters, very many district headquarters. There were monuments started in the 90s, and there we were. They were just standing there. Nyanza provincial headquarters, very ugly, standing there and abandoned. Not for one, not for two, for over 10 years. So what he did when he came in as president, they ring-fenced money specifically for stored projects, and they created this item. You know, budget, they say that if you are building Kapsabet district headquarters, you say that is money for Kapsabet, this is money for Eldoret, and you cannot move money across. Okay? But now, there was this kitty, 2 billion, and it could be used for any project. So in the Ministry of Roads and Public Works, what we did is with the minister, they told us we finished this one, pick these projects. So if this contractor is working faster, you pay him. And that way, all the stored projects, all the Nyai awards were completed. That was the building sector. No more eyesores. The road sector again, if we come to the road sector, all the stored road projects, and they were numerous, they were completed. Then you had the Port of Mombasa, rehabilitation, upgrading of very many facilities, and as I told you, the first berth, 2 berths to be constructed in a long, long time. The container terminal, I think berth number 19 and 20. JKIA, the upgrades that were started during his period and were completed in the Uhuru government. You know, the Terminal 1A, I think they call it Terminal 1A now. All those were started during his tenure. And of course, there are the infrastructure projects that really started. Even the private sector, the space was created for expansion within the private sector.
How about, schools and hospitals?
Schools and hospitals.
Whose responsibility was that? We've talked about it here many times and asked ourselves how many new schools have been built from scratch to a point where they can accommodate our children. Well, there's the rollout of the free primary education. One of the first complaints was lack of infrastructure to accommodate this increased number. Did you work on that?
No, the schools basically, they are left to the school boards. So it is the parents. It was free primary education, but that was left to parents and school boards. And I'm not very competent to talk about that. But I can tell you about one thing, the universities, the opening up of universities and funding of universities. We only had 2 universities. We had public universities. We had Moi, Kenyatta University, and Nairobi. And all of a sudden, He opened up, he gave charters to private universities. And just to let you know how serious he was about this, he had told us that every year we must fund a road project to a university. And we started with Baraton. It didn't have to be a public university. I remember we started with Baraton. We built the road to Catholic University, the back road to Catholic University. We built the road to Nazarene University from Ogata Rogai and several others. So his focus was such, and this was a directive from him. And maybe I should tell you one thing, going back to roads. Ambassador Mudaura had told me, if ever the president calls you and he asks you about the condition of the road between Mombasa and Maraba, if something happens on that road and there is a problem, know that your job has been terminated. You are gone. So we had certain guidelines.
You knew.
Yeah, we knew.
One of the most contentious things that we've discussed that came under your ministry was the railway.
Yes.
What was envisioned with the SGR?
Now, the SGR, I don't know whether I want to comment on that because it started during Kibaki's time.
Tell us what was in place during the Kibaki time.
I'll tell you this. The port of Mombasa, when I became minister, was handling 22 million tons of cargo
Per year.
per year. The railway, Kenya Railway, could only handle 1.5 tons of cargo.
1.5 million.
1.5 tons. And therefore,
1.5 tons.
1.5 tons. And therefore, the balance of over 20 million tons while moving
By
on
road.
If you work out that and divide that 20 million, divide by 365, that gives you the number of trucks, each carrying about, let's say, 20, 30 tons, 40-ton containers. And you'd find that you'd have convoys daily of about 20 kilometers. And therefore, it was impossible to maintain the road between Nairobi and Mombasa. The shifting of that cargo, and you know, the police roadblocks, there were way bridges, we did not have way in motion. Nini. You don't have traffic officers on the railway. And therefore, 50% of all the cargo from the port of Mombasa was coming to Nairobi. So, and that is how the idea of the SGR came. It's a good idea, and I think it has simplified transportation of cargo between the port of Mombasa and Nairobi.
But is it able to manage the cargo that the port receives on a yearly basis?
Yes, it is. In fact, I would recall that it has a capacity of about 22 million tons if it was to operate at full capacity. Because what happened, you can haul a train that is 1 kilometer long, that is the capacity, with double-decker containers. All the bridges between Nairobi and Mombasa are capable of, we have clearance that allows double-decker trains to pass through.
Let's talk about, you are very good with dates. So this particular date, 28th of March, 2015.
Yes.
What happened?
2015, the president went into parliament and said there was a list of people who had been accused of to the EACC, and my name was among that list. And he said, whether you are cabinet secretary, whether you are permanent secretary, you must step aside. Now, the names were not given at that time, so I went. But in the evening, in the news, my name was mentioned. I cleared my office on Friday. I walked in to my office on Saturday and stepped aside. Subsequently, I was pushed into the courts in May. I appeared before the magistrate on 10th of, on 4th of June. That is the first time I appeared before a magistrate. Yeah.
Why?
that there's a road in, I'll talk about it. There's a road in Mount Elgon, Kapkuya, Kaptama, all the way to Shwere, that we adjusted the design, okay? When I was a PS. The process is in court. But the reasons for which I'm accused, any engineer in this country, every engineer would be in my possession today if you follow the contract documents and you end up in court. The matter is in court. I was released by the Court of Appeal on 14th of July, 2017. I was given 1 year sabbatical, and in May they came for me, and then I'm back in court. We are still in court. So
this case is still going on?
It's still going on. In fact, I was supposed to appear in court.
How many charges are you facing?
It's one charge.
The same, just one charge?
Well, the others were kicked out. I'd been accused
the design.
That I failed to comply with the
procurement laws,
the Government Financial Regulations, Chapter 17, which has over 30 clauses, and each clause had about 10 sub-clauses, so I had about 300 charges. 300. So how do you answer to those 300 charges? So that was kicked out by the High Court, and I've left with one, which is, I can't remember exactly how it phrases, but we are in court. So
it's still going on.
It's still going on.
These are all corruption-related charges, engineer.
No, there's nobody who says that. They say we altered the design and we made the government lose 33 million.
Did you go before the anti-corruption court?
No, you know the commission. Yes, we wrote statements. But I'm before the anti-corruption case. My case is number 7 of 2018.
So we just have to ask you this question.
Please
Having
do.
worked
Please do, it's a fact.
In government for all these years,
Yeah.
were you ever involved in corruption?
Nope.
Ever
Nope.
asked for a kickback?
Never.
Ever altered the design of a road so that you can make some extra
Make
buck?
money? Never. But we alter designs every other day. Do you know the alteration of a design is coming here and finding out that these windows, you get distracted by those people there. And therefore you decide there is less traffic here, and then you move these windows. The size of these windows were probably 4 meters long, and therefore here you can only fit 3 meters. That is exactly what you do. And you do it on a daily basis. I'll tell you one thing. I should also be in court for putting the overpass at Pangani. It wasn't there, the flyover. So the work of an engineer is to design and keep changing the design. But you have to do it according to 2 things. 1, the contract document, and 2, the procurement law.
So there's a process that you have to follow in order for this alteration of design to take place.
Any alteration.
And are you saying that in all the times or all the cases where an alteration had to take place, that you followed due process?
Due process, in accordance to FIDIC, to the contract documents and the law. So I never feel guilty, but it has had a very big impact on my life, but that's okay.
Generally, there are very many accusations, and in fact, EACC goes to court and the Asset Recovery Authority goes to court for officers in those authorities in roads
Yes.
that have been involved in corruption.
Yes.
While you were a PS and also a CS, did you witness such cases where, you can clearly see hapa hii pesa inakuliwa?
There were very few. But they were there.
What were you doing about that?
Oh, disciplinary action. Or even call anti-corruption commission. Not once, not
Do you
twice.
think after your exit, the cases have increased?
What I did is I decided to behave like Lot's wife. I don't look back. I moved on.
You do not want to become
A pillar
pillar
of
of
salt.
salt.
Yeah, I don't want to become a pillar of salt.
Engineer Michael Kamau, thank you very much for joining us.
Asante sana.
Engineer MSM Kamau is Michael Sisto Mwaura Kamau.
Yes.
He has worked in government. He left university the same year as C.T. Muga.
Yeah.
Worked in government for many more years after C.T. Muga has quit our government and stopped working for us.
And they even have a song.
And they even have a song. Engineer Michael Kamau was Kibaki's roadsman, worked as a PS for roads between 2007 and 2013, worked as CS for roads between 2013 and 2015. He's been telling us about his years working for former President Mwai Kibaki. Asante sana for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you.